The new Phase 2 clone trooper helmets are fine. Y'all are just dumb. Now, before you get mad, just hear me out, okay? Okay. So, in this video, I will share my stance on the new Phase 2 clone helmets, as well as why people hate them and why LEGO made the choices they did. Now, I want to clarify that I am not shilling for LEGO in this video. They've made choices in the past that I strongly disagree with. I mean, for the love of God, this monstrosity exists. Never forget that. But I think some fans are being way too harsh on this one. Now first, we're going to briefly take a look at the history of LEGO's clone helmets. This doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the main topic of the video, but I wanted to do it anyway, so without further ado, look at this graph. Only 1.5% of y'all are subscribed, so please help a fella out and click that button below. You can always change your mind afterwards. Also like the video and comment below what you think about this subject, because I am interested in hearing your viewpoints, whether you agree or disagree with me. Alright, let's get to the video. Now let's start off by traveling back in time to the year when this movie came out. It was bad. It's still bad. But also, these sets were released. And considering the year, they're pretty good. Especially the gunship. But more importantly, this was the introduction of LEGO Clone Troopers. These guys. Now, living in the year 2023 and looking back on them, they're very rudimentary. But at the time, I don't know. I couldn't even walk. But I dare to guess the reception was mostly positive. LEGO Star Wars fan standards were not as high as they are nowadays. Let's jump a few years ahead to when this movie came out. It's okay. But more importantly, these sets were released, with these guys. And they continued the trend set by the Scout Trooper in the year 2000. Rather than having printed visors like nowadays, they had open visors with black heads, just like Boba, Django, and the last guys. Now, basically the same things apply to these guys as the last guys, so rather than repeating myself, I'll just say they were good at the time. Let's jump a few years again to when this movie came out. And it's the worst one of them all. It's not good, don't watch it. But what is good is all of these. Now, side note, I, and it seems a lot of people, hated these faces. Nowadays, I've come around to them and feel quite nostalgic about them, but at the time, I did not buy a lot of Clone Wars sets because of these. And boy howdy, do I regret that. Anyway, to the point, this guy was released, and he's still being used to this day. That was 15 years ago, and I don't blame him. It's a darn good helmet. But if you really want to be an asshole, then you could say Cody and Fox are wrong because the visor is supposed to attach above the holes, not to them, even on Phase 1 armor. But I mean, who would say that? That's just silly. Right, guys? Right? Now, let's do a little speed round here to fill in the gaps. So, in 2010, we got ARF and Phase 2 pilot helmets. In 2012, we got ARC Trooper helmets. And in 2014, we got Airborne and Scout Trooper helmets. They're not important for the purposes of this video, but I figured I'd mention them since it's a comprehensive run-through of all clone helmets. And I also mentioned the original Scout Trooper helmet was used for the Kashyyyk Trooper in 2005. Okay, let's move on to when finally a new Phase 2 helmet was introduced. And also this guy. And it was perfect. Except, unlike Phase 1 helmet, it didn't have any holes for accessories. But that was okay, because none of the troopers needed them. Oh, except for him. But that's okay. Who needs a rangefinder for their X anyway? I mean, even if they would have done it, they probably would have messed it up somehow, like putting the accessory holes all too high or something. I mean, they never do that, right? That'd just be silly, I mean, right? 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 And so, we have arrived to last year, 2022. And it was going to be a big year for LEGO Star Wars. Phase 2 Cody was rumored to be right around the corner, easily the most anticipated LEGO minifig of all time, for a very, very small subgroup on the internet, and he didn't have printed arms, or even dual molded arms, or a physical jetpack, or a more accurate visor, or he's exactly what people should have expected him to be, aka good. Now don't even get me started on the troopers. I mean, they're downright fuck. The printing is bad, and it's silly that LEGO doubled down on it, and I'm not going to defend it for it. But that's not what the video is about, though. It's about the helmets themselves. And now that we have taken a look at all the clone helmets of the past 20 years, let's move on to so why exactly is the new helmet bad? Well, it's because the holes are in the wrong place, or they're being used on troopers with no accessories in the first place. What about the new battle pack? All those troopers need holes. Well, one of them only needs one hole. What should LEGO do then? Have 3 different helmet molds? A 2-hole, a 1-hole, and a no-hole? Okay, fair enough. That shouldn't be too difficult. Just remove the hole on one side, but no, that's wrong too, because the rangefinder should be placed on the bump, not above it, like in the visor. Well, okay, great, fixed it. Now just have 3 slightly different helmets. That's not hard or expensive. No, 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 no. Okay, let's look at LEGO's response. So Solid Brick Studios conducted an interview with the LEGO Star Wars designer team back in September, where he asked them why they made the helmets like they did. And this is what they said.
The one and the molded one.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons here was we have these accessories in the visor.
Right.
It needs to sit correct on the helmet, so it kind of defined how
The location.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
And-
so that's really
The radius has to be the same in the running around the front as it is over the back, because if otherwise, when you lift the visor, there'll be a huge gap, or else the visor will hit the top
Right.
of the helmet. So if you lower the holes, the visor might sit fine here, but then you'd only be able to get it to there.
Gotcha.
So that has.
So
it's
I
a
guess-
different
an
equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what was it considered just removing the molded part of the hole, like keeping the holes where they are now, obviously, because that needed to physically be there to make it work. But was it ever considered to remove the molded part, that the hole under the actual physical hole? I know it sounds very confusing.
Yeah.
But yeah, was that ever
Like
considered?
we would have to lift the physically molded hole, but then
No,
kind of
we
remove
didn't.
it.
I don't think, because that wouldn't have been correct either. So.
No.
Yeah, this was.
So this is the compromise.
This
you
was
guys
the
did.
compromise.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a compromise
Alright.
between all the things that needed to work together, I suppose
Yeah.
would say.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It was a compromise. They said if the holes were lower, the visor would not have been able to lift it all the way up, and the reason they doubled them up was because not only is the visor connected above the holes, extending the side detail would have looked odd. Now, the first point was a bit strange at the time, since the visor doesn't need to be able to move up and down. However, it does make sense if you are planning something else that requires holes, like, for example, macro binoculars. Now, of course, this doesn't really explain why they didn't use the no-hole helmets they clearly had for the regular troops, and well, that's because money. But to play devil's advocate, I think there is another reason. LEGO's primary audience. Now, this may come as a shock for y'all, but you, yes you, the person watching this video, are most likely not a part of LEGO's target audience. At least you shouldn't be. YouTube is for people 13 and up. Now, what do kids have to do with any of this? Well, it's quite simple. LEGO is a toy company, as many people somehow like to forget. A premium toy, but still a toy. And also, kids like to make shit up. Wacky builds, custom figures. We all, when we were like 9, thought it would be a great idea to take a Sharpie and ruin our plain clone troopers. I myself made Rex, Gree, Fox, and a Coruscant Guard, and they looked downright terrible. But at the time, I loved them dearly. I don't have them anymore. I fortunately was able to remove most of the marker, but some remnants still remain. Now, what does it have anything to do with the new helmets? Well, every trooper from now on can be given a visor, a rangefinder, 2 rangefinders if you want to be real crazy, and macro binoculars. And that's something that every child can appreciate, and I personally appreciate it too, which gets us to the final chapter. Okay, you already know that I don't really mind the look. I think it's fine, and that's because of how most of us AFOLs use our LEGO. We don't. After we built them, most of us display them in cabinets and such with a bunch of other sets and figures. And I dare you to say that every time you look at your collection, the helmet holes catch your eye like a goddamn beacon, and your day's ruined. And if you say that that's the case, then you're just lying. It's such a small detail on such a small thing, and it genuinely surprises me how such a minute thing can cause such an uproar. Who am I kidding? Of course I'm not surprised. It's the internet we're talking about here. Now, this was a take I saw on Reddit, and I think it's a pretty good one. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but it went something like, why are people expecting picture-perfect characters from LEGO? Because if that's what they're after, then just buy action figures like Hot Toys or something. And like, yeah, it's okay to like LEGO for their figures and just collect them. I do that, but why are you expecting them to be 100% detailed to the brim? Now, I know this has more to do with the printing, but it still kind of applies here. Okay, let's conclude the video now. Now, I know there'll still be a bunch of people who disagree with me on this one, and that's fine. I'd love to have a respectful conversation about this in the comments below, but being an unbearable little shit about it is obviously not cool. And so, if you made it this far in the video, I hope you enjoyed it. It was a bit different from what I usually do, and if you did, please be sure to like and sub. That would mean the most. So, thank you for watching, and let's hope there is no more major controversy in the LEGO Star Wars community.